I'm Jennifer Shinkai, host of Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai, a podcast filled with heart-to-heart, long-form conversation between me, an executive coach based here in Tokyo, and my guests, a diverse group of people finding their sense of Ikigai in a host of different ways that are much more nuanced and expansive than a simple and kind of boring four-part Venn diagram. Before we dive into the episode, please do like and subscribe so that you don't miss our next video. And if you want to get in touch with me about coaching for yourself or for your organization, feel free to drop me a DM. Let me know what you think of today's episodes in the comments. Can't wait to hear your takeaways. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai podcast. This is season 3, and I am your host, Jennifer Shinkai, coming from the Shitamachi in Tokyo. I was going to say coming to you live. I'm live right now, but by the time you're listening to this, it won't be live. It will be recorded. And hopefully we are coming out just in time for a very important anniversary in my neighborhood, which Adrian knows much more about than me, our guest today, which is the firebombing on March the 10th, 1945 of Tokyo. And Adrian tells all about that because he is an amazingly talented filmmaker who brought me to tears more than once when I watched his documentary Paper City, which premiered at Melbourne in 2021. It's screened theatrically in Japan, and it's also screened in my local civic centre, culture centre in the Shitamachi in Kyojima. Well, in Hikifune it was. And you've made a couple of other films as well, right? Lessons from the Night, which was in Berlin, right? No, Sundance, my goodness. Sundance you premiered, amazing. And just amazing awards. And he's also got a TEDx talk, so you can find out more about the story behind Paper City from his experience. But I invited Adrian today because, one, I was so moved by his film and I wanted to use my very small platform to give more people awareness of this important story, which I'll tell you what, Adrian, after I watched it, when I looked at all of the older people in my neighborhood who maybe weren't alive when it happened, but their parents went through it, it just made me look at them in really a different way about like what that generational trauma was like, what this area has been through. So thank you for that perspective. It was really, really powerful. Yeah. And so I invited it. Oh, go on. I was just going to say, right, no, going. Good, let's cut me. We've done the intro. Let's go. What do you think?
I was just, I mean, you know, it was 79 years ago, in 1945. So if you've seen, you know, old people in your neighborhood who are as young as, say, 82 or 83, then they might have been alive at that time, you know, strapped to their mother's back, you know, as she was running down the street to escape the flames. And I saw plenty of stories like that. So yeah, as people that young may not remember it, but may have experienced it, definitely.
Well, they were, you know, being born into families that had been through that, had lost so much, right? And were dealing with the aftermath as well. Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of sorry to go straight into stuff, but I mean, let's do it.
If you see, I mean, if you look at, say, the targeting of civilians right now for example in Gaza, then you imagine how this plays out through generational trauma, you know, and the kids there that survive until they're 80 years old, you know, how those stories going to be passed on through generation and generation. And you know, actually some of the images coming out of there remind me of very much some of the things I saw when I was making the film. I mean, the area that you live in East Tokyo was absolutely wiped out. And you can see similar images now coming out of Gaza. So like not just the death, but the leveling of whole parts of cities.
Yeah. I got to find out something quite interesting about my neighborhood park after watching your film. Well, two of our neighborhood parks. So one part was in your film, talking about the park in Kinshcho, which is now in front of where the sports hall is, and that was actually a mass grave. I didn't know. And then I found out that the park had a koan right near my house, which I think you also know. When they built the toilets, they found some bodies in where the toilets are. So I didn't know about this, but all my kids knew about it because the haunted toilets of Haruko and are like famous in like that story has passed down through the generations.
The haunted story, the haunted toilet story came before people found the bodies.
No.
After, okay.
So as they were making it, they
Yeah.
found the bodies, they're digging up in the area, they found the bodies, and then it's become this. I don't know that the toilets are haunted, but the story of the children has been passed down like to my kids know about it, and they were like, oh yeah, that's why we really don't like going in those toilets.
Right. See, that's just a little bit of local folklore that,
Yeah.
People don't necessarily know is connected to this massive historical event. But
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way that Tokyo can't be a city of ghosts if you think about this kind of, and many other places too. But if you think,
Yeah, from this. Oh yeah. Oh, I've got chills already. Anyway, so moving in though to our content for today and the things that I wanted to talk about. Because when I originally approached you, you were like, yeah, sure, sounds good. And then we had a long period of silence. And you were like, oh, we eventually talked, I think it was last week. And you said, I'm going through this big transition. It's not all sorted. I'm not quite sure where I am, when it comes to my Ikigai. And I've said to you, please come on, because I think this is where so many people are in this searching, in this trying to find something. What is that is making it worth getting out of bed in the morning? What is something that makes you feel like your life has meaning? So it's like, I think this is a really beautiful moment to capture as an archive for yourself, as we talked about, but also for other people to see and to feel seen. Okay, I'm thinking like this, I'm saying things like this. Okay, I'm not alone and I'm totally normal. So I sort of want to normalize that through our conversation as well. So no pressure, no pressure to be totally vulnerable and bring it in.
no pressure felt.
No pressure. But first of all, I did want to talk about Paper City because you're originally from Australia, right?
Yeah.
So what made you decide to tell the story of the Tokyo firebombing? How did this all happen?
Yeah. Well, because I grew up in Australia, I think our war history was very much, in a nutshell, about the good things the Allies did and the bad things our enemies did. It's not much more complicated than that. So the only thing I really knew about Japan's wartime experience was the awfulness of the Imperial Army, and then the attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which I'm sure every kid in the world grows up learning about. But I didn't know that there were, 60 plus other cities that were bombed. And I saw this documentary called Fog of War by an American filmmaker, Errol Morris, which is a great film. And one particular sequence looks at the firebombing of Tokyo. And at the time, I'd already been living in Japan for a few years, in Tokyo for a few years. And the thing that struck me was that in this one night of US bombing, 100,000 people were killed. So first of all, that number enough was kind of deeply shocking. It's the single biggest destructive act of war in terms of death in a single day.
So even now?
Yes, no other attack in history of 100,000 people died, you know, in the course of a day. And of course, you need modern warfare to get death on that scale. If people are fighting hand to hand, for example, you know, so it had to be from planes. And so that was shocking enough, the size of it. But I think the other thing that really got me was that for a city that had experienced such a huge attack and a huge trauma, that there didn't seem to be any kind of signs of it in the city itself, and people didn't really talk about it. At least people around me. So I did a bit of, you know, scratching around. I was talking to my friends about it, like, you know, what do you know about this? You know, this really happened. And most of my Japanese friends only kind of knew that, you know, it was a line in a junior high school textbook,
Right.
you know, March 10th, 1945, US bombed Tokyo. Maybe it had the number of dead, but that was it for most students. So they didn't know any other thing except for the date and maybe the death toll.
Right.
And so this idea that the single greatest aerial attack in human history was not anything more than like a footnote in a textbook. This is something I really couldn't understand. And because Tokyo was my city too, like I live here and I lived here, I just wanted, you know, I just couldn't comprehend this. I just wanted to understand why this was so, why this story was kind of missing from the identity of the place and the people. And so that was kind of my starting point, just wanting to understand why.
And you know, like a lot of people might have gone, I want to understand why. Okay, I'll maybe like read some books about it. But you made a full feature film. So how did it go from I want to understand why it's not being recognized, why it's not being to like I'll tell this story?
Well, I mean, at university I studied I started in a kind of BA, Bachelor of Arts, and I did a filmmaking subject as an elective. I don't know if people in other countries use that term, but something you can choose that's not related to your major. And I just, you know, we got to make these little short film projects, and I fell in love with it. And so after I graduated from university, like I've never been a very kind of a person that's good at planning, or I've never been very disciplined. So I just kind of drifted along through my 20s, and probably I was in. I mean, I made a few short films and stuff, but I think by the time I found out about the firebombing, I think I was in my very late 30s, and you know, I started to become interested and research it, and I didn't really know if I was going to make a feature film, but I think I was also approaching that age where I was thinking, oh, I need to really do something with my life, something that I really want to do. And around that time, my father died of cancer. I came out of a long-term relationship. I think it was 11 years. And so that put things on hold for a moment. But I think when I kind of was recovering from those things, I just had to kind of, you know, step up to the plate, to use a baseball metaphor. I had to do something. I had to do something significant, because I was also thinking, like, at that age, around 40, you know, my dad had, you know, 4 kids. He owned a home, and I had like nothing comparable to that. And it kind of made me, you know, get my shit together.
Right.
A little bit.
You can swear on this
Um,
podcast, by the way. Help yourself.
okay, great. So yeah, so I think that was that
Right.
that really steeled me to kind of do something.
Yeah.
But it was it was mortifying, the idea of making a feature film, and particularly in Japan,
Mm.
um, without, like I was working with a producer in Australia, um, uh, and of course I was collaborating with people here, but yeah, kind of driving the project from Japan and doing a lot of things in Japanese,
Mm.
which were very, very hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of trying things slightly outside or of my skill set or above, my Japanese level, things like that. Um, but
Mm.
that's kind of how it got started. And once it gets started, you can't stop. Eh,
Right.
And what I mean by that is I couldn't have lived with myself if I stopped, if I gave up. I would have, that would have been devastating. So
Mm.
I'm not sure if that was
No, that was a
where you
really,
were
really no,
going, but
beautiful answer. Beautiful answer. I want to take away that one about sometimes there's those catalysts in life, that like realization that yeah, I've got to get my shit together and step up. Like this, like the learning that comes out from that loss. Um, and then also what you said about doing a lot of things outside of your skill set. I was just talking to a client yesterday and they were talking about a role in a corporate role. And they were like, what's the difference between being ready soon and ready now? And I think it's like you don't get that skill set until you do it. So you did it. Obviously, it's not to say, yes, it was all smooth and perfect. And there were, of course, like many challenges, but just having that awareness that, oh, this is a big stretch. Like doing this kind of meaningful work is going to stretch me. And then when you said I would have been devastated if I hadn't finished it, I got like proper goosebumps. And I was just thinking about the stories, like the characters, well, they're people, they're real people, and their lives, and like what are just beautiful. I can't even think of what the word is. Homage sounds a bit pretentious, but it's not that. Like the honoring of their life and their stories, and I feel like you really felt that. Like I have to finish this. Like once you've done the first interview, you can't not stop.
yeah, actually, I mean, I was kind of talking on a personal level, you know, in terms of my own
Yeah,
development. But I mean,
right.
yeah, I think like just maybe people don't have a lot of context for this, but like um, the survivors in Tokyo, for a long time, they've been for decades,
Mm,
going back to the late 60s and 70s, people have been campaigning for the city to properly memorialize
yeah.
what happened, because
Mm,
there's not really anything to show people what happened. There's no real, um, you know, purpose-built sites of memory or
yeah.
anything like that. So, um, yeah, for decades, these now elderly or people,
Mm,
have been campaigning and asking the government to do something to no avail. And I think when you look at these old people, these very small, delicate old people, um, who have this incredible resilience
mm,
and incredible, I guess, Ikigai, right,
yeah.
right through until the end of their lives. Uh, knowing that if they don't kind of do something to pass on memory or to force the city to leave something behind, then things are going to fade away. So the memory of what happened is going to fade away. So I think those, as you said, like those people are incredibly strong,
Mm,
inspiring, and they might be physically frail, but they've got something I mean, imagine if experiencing something like they went through,
Yeah.
like this kind of turning point in your life. And after, from that day, you know, things will never be the same. Um, you know, you were a changed person. You know, everything was redefined by that experience. So yeah, having started to film with them, you know, I also couldn't let them down, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a bit overcome. And I know that silence is great on the podcast medium, so I'm speaking to fill time, but I just want you to know that those words really touched me a lot. And we will have like all the links for the site so that people who are interested can watch the film. And I really, really strongly recommend people. It's beautifully shot, and it's shocking and moving, and yeah, you just get to see these stories of this amazing deep resilience and passion. And as you say, like Ikigai, these people are just like fighting to get this recognition for their loved ones, for their communities. It's beautiful, beautiful work.
Thank you. And I would just, if I could just add one thing to that. I mean, I'd be happy if people anywhere would watch it. But I mean, if you live in or around Tokyo, you know, this is also, you know, it's our story. It's part of the fabric of the city we live in. And I think it has, you know, special resonance for people that call Tokyo home. You know, if you don't know about this, I think, you know, watching the film might add a dimension to the place that you didn't perhaps understand before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to, go to Hiroshima and Nagasaki to understand the brutalities of war. It's like literally in the haunted toilets.
Well, yeah,
Meters
and
from the
actually,
house.
you know, it is, and sending, for those listeners outside of Japan, uh, Tokyo schools send kids to Hiroshima and Nagasaki to learn about the war, and in a way, that's part of the whitewashing of what happened here. You know, the idea that we need to send people away when, in fact, the worst atrocities, you know, happened right here,
Yeah.
in our neighborhoods and on our doorsteps. Yeah.
Because it would lead to those awkward things. Well, why don't we have a big memorial just for these victims in Tokyo? And it's
Yeah,
hidden
exactly.
at the back of a shrine
Yeah.
in the corner.
Yeah.
And there's no list of all of these things are covered in beautiful detail in your film. Oh my goodness. When they showed the list, the scroll on the floor, I was glad for my handkerchief around.
Yeah,
My
there's
daughter was looking at me going,
I think what Jennifer's you're referring to is, yeah, there's one neighborhood that just one neighborhood that kept a list of recorded the names of the dead in their neighborhood, and it was about 800 people, you know, in a neighborhood of 2,000. So you can see on a neighborhood scale what that meant. But when you look along the list, you see the same surname, you know, sometimes 10 or 15 in a row, which meant that, you know, multi-generations of one family were just wiped out, you know. Yeah. So
and on that note, let's shift gears, because there are this was 7 years of your life. And when we were talking last week about, what should we talk about on the podcast, you were saying that so now that the film is out there, it's had some release. Like, of course, you're still doing promotional work and things, but it's kind of, the baby has flown the nest. And you said a really powerful expression to me, and that resonated. You said, like, it just has left this void to fill. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about like where you are right now as you think about, you've made this amazing, meaningful work. It's something tangible. It's something impacting people, honoring people, all of these things. So you have something. I know you said before, like, I compared with my dad and like you have left created a really, really beautiful thing in the world. But a little bit, it's kind of done, right? Still there.
Oh, it's done.
It's
Yeah.
done. So, and of course, people say, so what's next? Are you going to make another film? It's a bit like if you have a baby, as soon as you have a baby, people say, you're going to have another baby. Like, just to let you know, as a parent, like, I'm sure your dad was getting that question. Like, are you going to have a fifth? 4 kids, he said, right? Are you going to have another one? So yeah, so where are you now?
Well, yeah, I think, yeah, all of those things that you just said. I mean, um, uh, you know, look, I have a little day job, but I mean, for 7 years, making the film was, my reason for getting out of bed, and you know, uh, there were so many things to do. It was squeezed into every bit of my life, mornings, nights, weekends. Um, and when that was finished, it it left, I think, not only a physical void in terms of, time, a temporal void, I suppose, but I mean, uh, yeah, it was like I kind of looked around me, and I think at that time I was 46, 7. And I was like, well, where am I? Who am I? What am I going to do now? And I think also, that period of making was so intense that, you know, I, I'm single. I didn't really, wasn't able to kind of start a relationship in that time. I think definitely, I wasn't able to pay so much attention to friendships in that time. And so I kind of came out of it feeling good, uh, feeling a sense of achievement, but
Yeah.
after was really quite a strong sense of being lost. I mean, I was lost, and you know, um, you know, really getting to this question of like, well, what's, one needs to have meaning in one's life. What is my life going to mean after this? I don't know how else to put it, but yeah.
Yeah.
So the feeling of being lost was not good at all, and that was a few months. But after, the next step was kind of, well, I need to search for meaning. I need to find something to care about deeply, or to throw my energy into next. Yeah.
We'll get onto that
But
in a
yeah,
moment, but
yeah.
I just want to reflect that sense of, it's something that when we don't talk about enough, I think, this idea of when something finishes and we have this great achievement, and then there is this pause. There's a process in systems coaching called myth change, and it's really powerful to go, the story, so you were the filmmaker, you were working on this, you were editing all of those hours, and then now you're a new character and you're not the filmmaker anymore. But like, what's this new myth? What's this new story? What's the new origin that's coming? And we often don't have a process to, be grateful for what happened, to grieve what we're losing from it, and then to kind of move into the next. And this, like, I mean, I run this with at one level, like with corporate teams that have had an organizational change. It's always like, well, your org's changed. Okay, so now let's look to the future. And there's no process to say, well, I quite miss that about the old org. And yeah, that was like the fact that I don't have any relationships because I had no time for anything. Yeah, that kind of sucks, actually. So I'm glad that I've maybe got this time back, right? You can kind of pick and choose, but what do I want to carry forward? Just like having that process, and knowing that it's going to happen. you know, it's maybe the thing that like now you look back on that period of time, you go, yeah, of course that was going to happen. Yeah, it was like a massive change in my life. It was a massive transition. Of course I was going to feel crappy for some time. Totally natural. But when you're in it, you sort of like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah. I mean, I'd had it before, maybe for small projects like short
Mm,
films, but
yeah,
they're just a matter of months from beginning to end. I think
right.
it's when it spans years,
Yeah,
it's
almost a
you
decade,
know,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And it wasn't like a
Um,
light, fluffy thing that you were doing either, right? It's like the stories
yeah,
that you had to carry and the stories you had to hold. And as you talked about, like the I can't give up on this thing. Yeah, it's a all
yeah.
consuming. Yeah.
And I think also actually one part of that is that, when it was released last year in Tokyo and it was
Mm,
showing it in cinemas in Tokyo, I could finally see the result of it, which was incredible to see audiences come and be moved and then come and speak to me afterwards, of all ages,
mm,
from 20s to their 80s or 90s. Um, uh, and some non-Japanese people, but
mm,
also many, many, many Japanese people and many people from Tokyo. So that kind of helped ease the transition out uh, of the process, of maybe letting go. Like, but I think one thing that uh, I'm not sure if I'll make another film or not, because the process was so long, and making a relatively low budget film means you've got to do so much yourself. And I think the big problem for me, while films are very can connect with audiences very strongly, can say something very complex through storytelling. It's that they just take so damn long to make, and to reach an audience is, it's a very indirect
mm,
process. And I think more and more I feel like I want to be involved more directly,
mm,
um, with people, or to do actions that have a a result that comes much more directly or
right.
quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not feeling
So
that huge gap, but like whether it's a time lag or like the emotional gap between what you do and the impact of what you're working.
that's exactly what I
Yeah.
wanted to say. Yes.
I just reframed it. That's all.
Good.
Just
Excellent reframing.
summarized
Yeah.
your words. I'm glad that I captured it. That makes me very happy. So there's a reminder also to everyone to when someone you know does something, tell them that it moved you. Tell them that it had an impact. Like that's a very important gift that you can give to someone.
Oh, I've got something else to say about this.
Oh,
Like when I first started going to film school, like when you show film things that you make, it doesn't have to be films, whatever you're doing, and people are like, oh, interesting, and they feel like they've got to say something positive, uh, and it's a very uncomfortable moment sometimes if they didn't really get it, or if they didn't see anything positive. But like as you said, I think it's really important to say something. Um, and I honestly think saying something honest that's even possibly not positive
mm,
might be a good thing. I think to sh to show your engagement, the way in which you're engaged or provoked to the
mm,
maker, I think is really an important thing. Like, after spending so long with a project, the person that made it knows how they feel about it. They have that relationship's really important. So uh, the reaction of audiences, of course, is very important, but people don't need like fake praise or whatever.
no.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
definitely.
I'd rather people tell me how it moved them, or why it didn't move them, or like, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that feedback loop is important for
Yeah.
the person that made something
Yeah.
or did something.
And it reminds me, I've been talking with quite a few coaching clients recently about praise and criticism. People talk about it from a confidence perspective. And a coach called Tara Moore has a great perspective on like unhooking from both praise and criticism. And the idea that, you know, all that any feedback tells you is about that person's values. So whether it's praise or like criticism that says like how it didn't move, it just tells you what they value. It doesn't tell you anything about you. It doesn't really tell you anything about your work. But it just tells them that, for example, this person values this type of editing, or this person values these types of, you know, aesthetics. It's just about them, and it's nothing about you. And I think that's an interesting perspective as a creator, right? Because it's very vulnerable, like putting your work out into the world as well. But it doesn't
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
be. It doesn't actually have to be if you can unhook.
Oh, yeah. I think that's interesting. I think in a way, as a filmmaker or artist, I want to be vulnerable in the process, though. I think if I feel, because it's not, maybe if you're doing a job for hire, it might be different, but like, you know, I nurtured this project along with my producer from the very beginning, and everything happened because we, you know, drove it forward. So
Yeah.
there's a way in which it's not separable from me as a person. But
Yes.
this is me. Yeah, but
Yeah.
you know, I wasn't collecting a paycheck or something. Like I'm there, and the film is a documentary about the firebombing, but it's also a documentary of me through those 7 years, you know, where I was, what I was doing, who I was speaking to, how I felt. That's all there for me. You can't see
Yes.
that necessarily.
Yeah.
The audience can't see it, but for me, that's all. That's, you know, every frame is kind of dripping with
Hidden
memory,
parts of
memory.
Adrian. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you
what?
have a
Yeah, yeah.
totally different perspective on that. But I'm conscious of time, and I want to move into where you are now and the future. And you're feeling a call. You're feeling a nagging voice. Tell us about this emerging essence which is coming through for you right now.
Uh, yeah. Well, um, so I mean, the thing I just said a couple of minutes ago about wanting to do something with a more direct impact, I think is part of this. But you know, I've I remember when I was a kid, and you know, in the 80s, and we started to hear on the, you know, in the news about the greenhouse effect and global warming and things like this.
Yeah.
Um, you know, this is 4 decades ago. Um, uh, and at that time, these were kind of like scientific observations or you know, predictions about what was going to happen. But now we can see, you know, these effects of you know, planetary heating, insane weather all around us every day. And we also know the cause of it, you know, CO2 emissions from human activity. And in my day job as a teacher to Japanese business people, just the last year or so, I've realized that I'm teaching a lot of people involved in basically dirty energy, in coal, oil, gas projects, and you know, I've been increasingly uncomfortable with this, and I definitely know that if you know, teenage me saw what I was doing, he definitely wouldn't approve. And I want to hold on to those values that I had as a kid. You know, I think in adult life, our values are always compromised by other realities, by the fact that we're getting paid to do a job, by, you know, nothing being exactly black and white. But through all those processes, I think we often struggle to hold on to what we kind of knew was right or good when we were younger. So now that I'm, you know, on the cusp of a big zero, one of those big zero birthdays, this year. So it's that's a turning point. It feels like a turning point. Yeah, I've just been thinking more and more that I want to get involved in some kind of positive action, to flash forward. Like, I know that, you know, hopefully at a ripe old age, on my deathbed, if I look back to this age, I think I will, at this time, you know, I would be asking myself, you know, what could I have done, or why didn't I do more? Because, you know, the effects of climate change are going to be much worse in a few decades. So I don't know where this is going yet, but I've kind of fallen in love with the idea of doing something, or fallen in love with this issue, the same way I fell in love with the firebombing, or doing something about that. So it's kind of early days. Yeah, I don't really have anything concrete to say, but it feels like you know, I'm on the cusp of working out where to put my energy.
I just want everyone who is listening or watching to reflect on Adrian, the hesitation, the what's coming, is like edginess of not quite knowing, but this feeling there's something coming. And I think this is just so recognizable, and it's like part of this process of like, where is my meaning coming from, and you something is starting to emerge, and just kind of being open to it. And then having that, I love that you've like had that flash forward, and you've had the flashback,
right
like that teenage judgmental teenage you, because they can't do anything wrong. Teenagers are often absolute dickheads, but anyway, different conversation. But you know, like that righteousness of your teenage self, who sees everything in actually like the clarity of that like black and white perspective. There is something that's like really pure and really meaningful in it as well. Like we have all these grays, right, of adulthood, of paying bills and being in a capitalist society, and we have to make compromises. But sometimes that 14-year-old self is like, do you really bad?
And certainly I mean, I think in all of us that 14-year-old self is there. It never goes away, but it gets harder to see that person as you get older, I think. Also, I've just noticed, those of you who can't see these images won't know, but as the sun's moved around through the course of this chat, the lighting on my face has got increasingly dramatic, and
yes, it is.
high contrast.
Wow.
So
yeah,
it fits with what we're talking about.
Yeah. So as a filmmaker, how are you going to use this lighting? What's the story that you want it to tell?
Well, it's just mirroring our conversation, but yeah, I think, just to pick up on what you said, I've really got no clue what I'm going to do, and I think only the sense. I mean, right now I'm just kind of trying to, you know, educate myself and read as deeply as I can to understand the issues, you know, as best as I can, and also in order to work out where my energy might be best spent. I mean, I don't know, maybe it will be a film. Maybe that is the best way. Or maybe it might be something completely different. Yeah. But I want to, the sense is I want to be useful, which is kind of, yeah, that's the feeling, I guess, at this point in my life. I want to be useful to others.
Yes. And that is like, it's right back to one of the like foundational parts of the Ikigai 9 framework that talks about, I think that I have impact on someone or something. The world needs me, and having that desire to contribute is really, really important. But also I'm getting this sense of you as well, like this excitement to like learn new things and to discover and that's like a big driver of Ikigai as well, to like want to learn, to start something new. So I think you're really like, although I think in the West, when we talk about Ikigai, there's a lot of focus on, the Venn diagram and it's this point and you're in this. But actually, I think I'm getting chills as I say this. What you're experiencing right now is a big sense of having a life which is meaningful, the actual exploration of it.
That's meaning in the exploration itself.
Yes, because you're feeling this like, I really want to be useful, I want to have impact, I want to contribute. So I'm like, I know that that's coming for me, and then like I'm doing all of this research, I'm trying to find out about it. So you're like excited, like having that like looking forward. These are all like senses of like the ickiness, like the liveliness of Ikigai, not like the frustration and giving up and like it's too big for me to handle, I can't do anything. You're in this place of opportunity and possibility. So I just really want to honor that.
And I think once you find that, once you go through that process of discovery, then there's a very important period in which that kind of plays itself out. But it's as you said, the ickiness of it is going through that process of change.
You're saying ickiness like the English ickiness, like the sticky, or the icky. But just as you heard it said, I was like the IKI.
Like,
icky. I thought, oh, that's another way though of like the ickiness. There is actually an ickiness in this discovery moment, because it is a bit kind of, what do I do, and edgy and sticky. So we just made a new meaning of Ikigai.
If that's what you got, that's what I meant. That's what I intended.
That's what we'll take away. We'll take away from that. So if anyone has ideas and inspiration from Adrian based on what you've heard from today as to how he can be most useful in this existential crisis that the humanity is facing, make it big again, drop him a line. All his contact details will be in the show notes down below for those on YouTube. I have two final questions to ask you, which I ask to all guests as we begin to wrap up. So the first question is, what is a question that I haven't asked that I should have asked you, or you wish I had asked you?
So I'm enjoying the put on the spotness of this moment. One thing that going through this period of discovery, I'm trying to work out is partly what do I really love doing, and I'm also trying to look for those things. What is it about filmmaking that I love? Documentary filmmaking. What is it about teaching? And I write too. So what is it about writing? And I think what connects all these things. And I think for me, it's basically listening. I think that's something that good teachers need to do, and absolutely good filmmakers need to do. That process of listening is so important for me. And I think the other thing is helping to build bridges between things, between people who have different ideas, or between the present and the past. So I think maybe that's what I'm kind of good at, or what I love doing. And so when it comes into this new action, I guess that's a kind of maybe base that maybe my job is just to be a listener, and in whatever form that takes. That's all I got.
And how does that feel? How does that feel to say that?
About
like being, maybe my job is to be a listener.
Well, it's just, I mean, I know that because I think empathy is one of my things that kind of comes naturally for me. But it also, as I say it, there's still a lot of uncertainty, because I don't know in what way that's going to play out in the next chapter. It just seems to be what I'm naturally, good at, or drawn to. Yeah.
And so you'll be bringing that. I like that idea of like bringing that as the base. You've also talked about like, so what you're naturally good at. I feel like we're going into Venn diagram zone here.
Like I know.
I'm
Sorry.
like, oh, hang on. No, it's fine. It's fine, because it is a very useful coaching tool. But you talked about like, I've fallen in love with this problem. Like it's getting that emotion, what the world needs, for sure. And we'd be paid for. We'll work on that bit, right? That's not such the purist Ikigai, but we're still a capitalist society. So yeah, we need to eat.
I don't even know if I'll be paid. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah.
I mean, if I end up, blowing up pipelines or something, then I probably won't be paid. Not that I'm going to do that, but yeah.
Activism comes in all different forms.
All shapes and
all
sizes.
shapes and sizes, different forms. There we go. And a final question, which is, so from our conversation today, what is one thing that you would like listeners of Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai to take away with them?
I'm going to end with, I'd like to end by kind of paraphrasing Greta Thunberg. Is that how I never know how to pronounce her surname. Yeah. But, a few years ago when we started to hear about her, she was saying, she was criticizing, the adults in the room for not doing enough about this great existential crisis, that climate change, or the climate crisis. And I, never really feeling like an adult in the room, was like, yeah, fuck those guys. But only a few weeks ago, I realized, oh, she's talking to me too. I don't get a free pass here. I'm not a politician. I'm not running a corporation, but I'm an adult. I'm an adult in the room, and I think, all of us are. So I guess that's my final thing. I'm really curious about, what any of us can do, how any of us can be useful. And I think it's probably more than we think. It sounded like I was going to say something more, but because of my intonation, but that was the end of my sentence.
Classic Australian upspeak at the end.
Yes, there you go.
Ready series of Neighbours and Home and Away. But so it's time for us all to be the adult in the room. This is not speaking to someone else, speaking to us. So if you're listening to this, you probably are an adult in the room.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Adrian, for a very deep and impactful conversation. I really appreciate your vulnerability to share that edginess of this discovery place that you're in, and sort of role modeling what it's like, but also what those, this emergence can bring. It's like full of possibility. And I'm sure that you're going to start something and do something and move into this like next stage of creation for you. And just thanks again for Paper City, which is just an amazing work, and I'm always cheering it on. And I strongly recommend everyone to watch it wherever you can. So thank you so much for joining us. Tokyo, very much so. Yes, yeah. This is in, as you say, like it's in every relationship, every part of the city is impacted, and it's hidden. So let's reveal it a little more. Thank you so much, Adrian. Have a wonderful day. You're less excitingly lit right now, so you've maybe, oh no, there you are. You're back into stark contrast. So let's see the before after that happens. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for listening today. I really hope that you found something you could take away from the episode to help you find your own Ikigai and integrate it into your daily life. And I'd love to hear exactly what resonated with you. So pop over to see me on LinkedIn or on my Facebook page. You can find the links in the show notes below, and let me know what you thought was the most important takeaway from the podcast today. And sharing is caring, so feel free to share this episode with one of your friends who you think could benefit from hearing about living a life of purpose. Looking forward to see you on the next episode of Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai.